A motorcycle crash never asks for permission. It arrives without warning, fast enough to steal a life before the mind can even process what is happening. The most terrifying part is not the impact itself, but the moment just before it, when everything still feels ordinary, calm, and completely under control. Number 1. Olga Pronina. Olga Pronina was impossible to ignore on the streets of Vladivostok. Online, she was known as Monica, a fearless biker who turned every ride into a performance. With a powerful motorcycle beneath her and a growing audience watching every move, she built an image that felt untouchable. Her videos captured high-speed, risky maneuvers and a kind of confidence that blurred the line between control and danger. One hand on the handlebars, her body leaning into motion, she made risk look almost effortless. Viewers didn't just watch, they felt both admiration and unease, drawn in by the illusion that she had mastered something inherently unpredictable. Even when she admitted how extreme her riding was, even when she warned others not to copy her, she kept pushing further. Each ride had to be faster, more daring, more intense than the last. Because that is the nature of adrenaline, it convinces you that the next moment will still be yours to control. Over time, that confidence begins to feel like certainty, and certainty becomes a dangerous illusion. Then came July 31st, 2017. The conditions were perfect. Clear weather, dry roads, nothing out of the ordinary. It felt like just another ride, no different from the countless moments her audience had already seen. But in a single, irreversible second, everything changed. Olga lost control of her motorcycle and crashed into a roadside barrier at high speed. The impact was catastrophic, destroying the bike and ending her life before anyone could intervene. What makes her story so haunting is the contrast. Just moments earlier, she was the same bold, untouchable figure people believed in. But reality does not follow confidence, and it does not care about reputation. Behind the viral image was a real person, a mother with a life beyond the screen, and on that ordinary stretch of road, there was no warning and no second chance. Number 2. Butch Laswell. Butch Laswell didn't come across as someone reckless. He looked like someone who had mastered control. From a young age, he was fascinated by motorcycle jumps, heavily inspired by legends like Evel Knievel. But unlike many who only admired that world, Laswell committed to it. He trained relentlessly, turning risk into calculation, distance into precision, and danger into something that seemed almost predictable under his control. By the 1990s, he had built a reputation that set him apart. He wasn't just performing stunts, he was executing them with a level of discipline that made the impossible look routine. Thousands of successful jumps, record-breaking heights, and a calm, methodical approach made him appear untouchable. To audiences, he didn't look like a man flirting with death. He looked like someone who had figured out how to stay one step ahead of it. And that's where the illusion took hold, the belief that experience and precision could eliminate uncertainty. That illusion began to unravel on March 10, 1996, in Mesquite, Nevada. This wasn't just another performance. Thousands of spectators filled the area, cameras were rolling, and Guinness World Records officials were present. The stakes were higher than ever. Still, there was one variable that refused to cooperate: the wind. Gusts forced Laswell to delay his attempt, waiting for what seemed like the right moment, when conditions appeared stable enough to proceed. When he finally accelerated, his Honda CR500 surged up the ramp at nearly 70 miles per hour. The launch was clean. He soared into the air, clearing the skywalk bridge exactly as planned. For a brief moment, it looked like just another perfect execution, another confirmation of his control. But in midair, something shifted. A sudden crosswind pushed him off trajectory, just enough to make the difference between success and catastrophe. Number 3. Joy S.J. Harris. Joy S.J. Harris did not follow the usual path into the world of motorcycle racing. She built her place in it. Starting later than most, she learned to ride in 2009, earned her license by 2013, and by 2014 had become the first African-American woman licensed to compete professionally in motorcycle road racing. Her rise was not driven by hype, but by discipline, persistence, and a clear understanding of how much she had overcome to stand where she was. She wasn't just fast. She represented progress, opening a door for others who had rarely seen themselves in that space. That is what made her next step feel so significant. When she was cast as a stunt rider in Deadpool 2, doubling for Domino, it looked like the beginning of something bigger, a transition from racing into a wider spotlight with new opportunities ahead. But behind that opportunity was a critical detail that would only become clear in hindsight. It was her first time performing a stunt for a film. On August 14, 2017, in downtown Vancouver, Harris took part in a scene that was meant to be controlled and carefully managed. Instead, in a sudden and devastating moment, she lost control of the motorcycle, struck a curb, and was thrown through the window of a nearby building. She was not wearing a helmet, and she died at the scene. What makes this story especially haunting is what followed. Investigations later revealed that the production had failed in multiple areas of safety. There was no proper risk assessment, inadequate supervision, a lack of physical barriers to stop the bike, and no enforcement of required protective gear. In a situation that should have minimized danger, critical safeguards were missing. Harris should have been remembered only for what she achieved, the barriers she broke, and the path she created. Instead, her story became something more painful, a reminder that progress and opportunity can still be overshadowed when safety is overlooked. In a single moment, a rising future was cut short, not just by chance, but by failures that should never have been ignored. Number 4. Barry Oakley. Barry Oakley was not just a motorcycle rider. He was a defining sound behind the Allman Brothers Band, a bassist whose melodic, restless style helped shape the band's identity. On stage, he felt alive, energetic, and irreplaceable. But off stage, something had already begun to unravel. After the tragic death of Duane Allman in a motorcycle crash in 1971, Oakley was deeply affected. Friends and bandmates noticed the shift. He continued to perform, but the weight of grief was always present, quietly changing him. That is what makes what happened next feel less like coincidence and more like a cruel echo. On November 11, 1972, in Macon, Georgia, Oakley was riding his motorcycle when he crossed the center line on a curve and collided with a city bus. The impact threw him from the bike, and he suffered a serious head injury. Yet in a moment that would later feel tragically irreversible, he refused medical treatment at the scene and chose to go home. Hours later, his condition worsened. Disoriented and in severe pain, he was finally taken to the hospital, where doctors discovered massive internal injuries. It was too late. Oakley died soon after, at just 24 years old. What makes this story especially haunting is its symmetry. He died only 3 blocks away from where Duane Allman had lost his life the year before. Same city, same kind of accident, and at the same age. It turned an already devastating loss into something almost unimaginable, as if the same road had claimed 2 lives in nearly identical ways. Barry Oakley's story is not just about a crash. It is about grief that never healed, about a life caught between music and loss, and about how tragedy can repeat itself in the most unsettling ways. In the end, he was not only remembered as a brilliant musician, but also as someone taken by the same shadow that had already fallen over his band. Number 5. Charles P. Conrad Jr. Charles P. Conrad Jr. was far more than a well-known rider. He was a historic figure, the third human to walk on the moon, a Navy test pilot, and a mission commander who had repeatedly faced and survived extreme danger. His life was built on courage, discipline, and precision, shaping an image of a man who seemed almost immune to risk. To many, Conrad represented the idea that some individuals are simply destined to overcome every challenge, returning safely from even the most impossible situations. That is why the shift in his story feels so striking. On July 8, 1999, the danger that would end his life did not come from space or a high-risk mission, but from something far more ordinary, a curve on a road near Ojai, California. While riding with his wife and friends on the way to Monterey, he lost control of his motorcycle. Notably, he was wearing a helmet and proper riding gear, and authorities reported that he was not exceeding the speed limit. Despite these precautions, the crash caused severe internal injuries, and he passed away just hours later at the hospital at the age of 69. The emotional weight of this story lies in the powerful contrast it constructs. The narrative carefully elevates Conrad as a larger-than-life figure, someone who had endured the vacuum of space, the immense pressure of command, and the dangers of aviation, only to bring him back down through a sudden, ordinary accident. This contrast creates a deep sense of irony, reinforcing the idea that no level of experience or greatness can fully protect a person from a single unpredictable moment. Number 6. The Fallen Seven, Jarhead's MC. The Fallen Seven tragedy began like any ordinary group ride, peaceful, controlled, and with no indication of the disaster about to unfold. On June 21, 2019, members of the Jarheads Motorcycle Club, including Marine veterans and their families, were traveling together along U.S. Route 2 in Randolph, New Hampshire. With 15 motorcycles carrying 22 people, the group embodied unity and shared experience, enjoying what should have been a routine journey. That sense of normalcy was shattered in an instant when a pickup truck towing a trailer suddenly crossed the center line and slammed into the formation. The impact was catastrophic, turning the road into a scene of destruction within seconds. Twisted metal, fire, and riders thrown violently across the highway. When it was over, 7 people had lost their lives, and several others were seriously injured, many left with lasting physical and emotional trauma. What makes this tragedy even more profound is who the victims were. These were not reckless riders or thrill seekers, but individuals who had already faced hardship, service, and sacrifice. Their rides symbolized brotherhood and healing, which makes the sudden loss even more devastating. The pain did not end with the crash. In 2022, the truck driver involved was found not guilty, a verdict that reopened wounds for the families and survivors. Although authorities later confirmed negligent operation and suspended his license, the legal outcome left a deep sense of injustice. As a result, the story of the Fallen Seven endures not only as a fatal accident, but as a powerful reminder of grief, outrage, and the lasting silence that tragedy can leave behind. Number 7. Cedric Benson and Amna Najam. Cedric Benson and Amna Najam lost their lives in a tragic motorcycle accident on the night of August 17, 2019, in Austin, Texas, an evening that, at first, felt completely ordinary. Benson, a former NFL running back known for his achievements and strong presence on the field, was riding his BMW motorcycle with Najam, a 27-year-old recent graduate who had just earned her doctorate in audiology and was beginning a career built on helping others. Both were not at the end of their journeys, but still fully in the middle of their lives, with accomplishments behind them and meaningful futures ahead. According to Austin police, Benson was traveling at a high rate of speed along FM 2222 when the motorcycle collided with a 2014 Dodge van attempting to make a left turn from Mount Bonnell Road at around 10:20 p.m. The crash happened suddenly and with great force, leaving no time to react. Witnesses at the scene, along with a passenger from the van, immediately tried to provide assistance, but the injuries were too severe, and both Benson and Najam were pronounced dead at the scene. Later reports from local residents highlighted that the intersection was particularly dangerous, with hills and blind turns that reduced visibility and increased the risk of collisions. What makes this tragedy especially haunting is the powerful contrast between the normalcy of the moments leading up to the crash and the irreversible outcome that followed. Just hours earlier, Benson had posted a photo of his motorcycle online, capturing what seemed like a routine and uneventful Saturday night. There were no signs that this would be their final ride. In a single instant, one collision, one miscalculation, everything was taken away. Number 8. Kim Thompson. Kim Thompson was never known for reckless stunts or chasing attention. For him, motorcycles were simply part of a life built around movement, routine, and freedom. That is what makes his story feel so unsettling. There was nothing dramatic about the moment before everything changed. Thompson was a respected Australian surfboard shaper and innovator whose influence reached far beyond the spotlight. Through decades of work in the global surfing industry, particularly in Thailand and with Cobra International, he helped shape the boards and craftsmanship that became part of surfing culture around the world. He was not just a businessman or a designer, but a quiet creative force whose work left a lasting impact on an entire community.